When you picture military vehicles, you probably think of tanks, trucks, maybe helicopters. But motorcycles built for war? Well, that's a whole different battlefield. Most people know about the jeeps and planes of World War II, but almost nobody knows about the two-wheeled warriors. Bikes that could be dropped from the sky, machines that could climb walls, and motorcycles so tough that they're still running 80 years later. Today, we're going behind the front lines to uncover 5 military motorcycles most riders have never heard of. But before we get started, smash that like button and hit the new hype button to fuel the channel. Number 5. The Harley-Davidson WLA. The bike that literally liberated Europe. When World War II broke out, Harley-Davidson didn't just support the war effort, they became the backbone of Allied communication. The WLA, where W stood for the 45 cubic inch engine, L for the high compression, and A for Army, was America's answer to mobile warfare. This wasn't some civilian bike with a coat of olive drab paint. The WLA was purpose-built for war. That 45 cubic inch V-twin engine pumped out reliable power that could handle anything from the deserts of North Africa to the frozen battlefields of Europe. But here's what made it special. It was virtually indestructible. The WLA featured a recirculating oil system, which was revolutionary for its time. Earlier military bikes used total loss oil systems that required constant attention. The WLA? Well, you could ride it hard all day without babying the oil pump. Harley produced over 70,000 WLAs during the war, plus spare parts for another 30,000 bikes. Now these machines saw action everywhere, from Normandy to the Pacific Theater. They carried messengers through enemy fire, transported medical supplies to field hospitals, and served as the eyes and ears of advancing armies. But here's the incredible part. These bikes were nicknamed Liberators in Europe, because they were often the first Allied vehicles to roll into occupied towns. Picture this. After 4 years of Nazi occupation, the first thing many Europeans saw of their freedom was a GI on a Harley-Davidson WLA. The bike was so reliable that many continued serving long after the war ended. Today, restored WLAs are worth serious money, but back then, well, they were just tools that had to work every single time. Number 4. The Zündapp KS 750. Germany's answer to the ultimate military motorcycle. While the Allies had their WLAs, the Germans were building something completely different. The KS 750 wasn't just a motorcycle with a sidecar bolted on. It was an integrated 3-wheeled vehicle, designed from the ground up for military use. Now here's what made it special. This thing had 2-wheel drive. Not just the rear wheel, but the sidecar wheel was also powered through a sophisticated shaft drive system. That meant incredible traction in mud, sand, or snow. When other bikes were getting stuck, the KS 750 just kept going. The heart of this machine was a 751cc flat twin engine that produced enough torque to pull 3 fully equipped soldiers plus gear. But the real engineering genius was in the transmission. It had 4 forward gears, 4 cross-country gears, and 4 reverse gears. You could literally back this thing up a mountain. The German army demanded a bike that could carry 500 kilograms. That's over 1,100 pounds, while maintaining 80 kilometers per hour on the Autobahn. The KS 750 delivered. It could ford streams, climb steep inclines, and even had provisions for snow chains. From 1941 to 1944, Zündapp built over 18,000 of these machines. They served on every German front, from the Russian steppes to the North African desert. The bike was so advanced that after testing, the German army actually preferred it over BMW's competing R75 design. But here's the crazy part. The KS 750 was so over-engineered that it cost as much to build as 2 Volkswagen Kübelwagens. That's like spending the price of 2 Jeeps on one motorcycle today. But when your life depends on mobility, cost becomes secondary to capability. Number 3. Welbike. The world's smallest military motorcycle that could literally drop from the sky. Picture this. You're a British paratrooper in 1942, jumping behind enemy lines. Your mission requires mobility once you hit the ground. But how do you get a motorcycle to the battlefield? Simple. You fold it up and drop it in a parachute container. The Welbike, officially known as the Excelsior Welbike, was pure British ingenuity. This tiny machine weighed just 70 pounds and could be folded into a package small enough to fit in a standard parachute drop container. Once on the ground, it took less than 10 seconds to unfold and start. Now don't let the size fool you. This 98cc single-cylinder engine could push the Welbike to 30 miles per hour. Now that might not sound like much, But when you're trying to link up with your unit after a night drop, 30 miles per hour beats walking every time. The engineering was brilliant in its simplicity. The handlebars folded back over the engine, the seat pushed down into the frame, and the whole thing became a compact package that weighed less than most soldiers' full kit. From 1942 to 1945, Excelsior built nearly 4,000 Welbikes in 3 different versions. The Mark I was the original prototype refined for production. The Mark II Series 1 added improvements like a rear mudguard. The final Mark II Series 2 featured better fuel tanks and improved filler caps. But here's where it gets interesting. The Welbike's biggest problem wasn't mechanical, it was tactical. In combat, paratroopers needed to get under cover immediately after landing. Having to find and assemble a motorcycle often meant the difference between life and death. Many Welbikes were captured by enemy forces, or simply abandoned when speed mattered more than mobility. Still, for the missions where it worked, the Welbike was revolutionary. It proved that military motorcycles didn't have to be big to be effective. Sometimes being small and smart was better than being powerful. Number 2. The BMW R75. The motorcycle that was so advanced it influenced American design for decades. While Germany had the Zündapp KS 750, BMW was developing their own military masterpiece. The R75 took everything good about the KS 750 and refined it even further. This wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a mobile weapons platform. Like the Zündapp, the R75 featured 2-wheel drive with power going to both the rear wheel and the sidecar wheel through a sophisticated shaft drive system. But BMW added their own engineering touches that made it even more capable. The 745cc flat twin engine produced 26 horsepower, but more importantly, it produced massive torque from idle. This thing could lug up steep hills at walking pace without stalling. The transmission offered multiple gear ranges, road gears for highway cruising, and cross-country gears for off-road work. But here's what made the R75 special. It had a locking differential. When the going got really tough, you could lock the diff and send equal power to both driven wheels. Combined with the low-range gearing, this made the R75 virtually unstoppable in rough terrain. The suspension was advanced for its time, with telescopic forks up front and a sophisticated rear setup that could handle the weight of 3 soldiers plus equipment. The brakes were hydraulic, a feature that wouldn't become common on civilian bikes for years. BMW built over 16,000 R75s during the war, and they served on every front where German forces operated. But here's the incredible part. The R75 was so impressive that after the war, the US Army asked Harley-Davidson to build a copy. That request led to the Harley-Davidson XA, America's first shaft-driven motorcycle. It was essentially a direct copy of the BMW R75, proving that sometimes the best compliment is imitation. The R75's influence didn't stop there. After the war, the Soviets captured BMW's factory in Tullin, using it to create the Ural motorcycles that are still in production today. That's right, you can still buy a descendant of the BMW R75 right now. Number 1. The Rokon Trail-Breaker, the motorcycle that could do the impossible. While our other bikes were built for World War II, the Rokon Trail-Breaker represents the evolution of military motorcycle thinking. Developed in the 1960s and used extensively during the Vietnam War, this machine could do things that seemed to defy physics. First, let's talk about the 2-wheel drive system. Unlike the German bikes that used complex shaft drives, the Rokon used a simple but brilliant chain and sprocket system to power both wheels. This made it lighter, simpler to maintain, and incredibly capable off-road. But here's where it gets crazy. The Rokon could float. Those massive 8-inch wide tires weren't just for traction. They provided enough buoyancy to cross streams and swamps. Soldiers could literally ride this thing across water obstacles that would stop any other vehicle. The Trail-Breaker could climb trees that would challenge a mountain goat. We're talking about 60-degree slopes, angles so steep most vehicles would flip over backwards. The Rokon's unique weight distribution and 2-wheel drive made it possible. The engine was a simple but reliable single-cylinder unit that prioritized torque over horsepower. This wasn't about speed. It was about going places no other vehicle could reach. The Trail-Breaker could carry supplies to remote outposts, evacuate wounded soldiers from impossible terrain, and provide reconnaissance in areas where helicopters couldn't land. During Vietnam, these bikes proved invaluable for special operations. They could be dropped by helicopter into jungle clearings, ridden through terrain that would stop a jeep, and even hidden underwater if necessary. But the real genius of the Rokon was its simplicity. While other military bikes required specialized mechanics and complex parts, the Trail-Breaker could be maintained by anyone with basic mechanical skills. In a war zone, that reliability was worth more than any high-tech feature. The company is still building Trail-Breakers today, and they're still being used by military and emergency services around the world. It's proof that sometimes the best design is the one that just works, no matter what you throw at it. Now here's the bottom line. These weren't just bikes, they were tools of survival, strategy, and speed. The Harley WLA liberated a continent. The Zündapp KS 750 showed German over-engineering at its peak. The Welbike proved small can be powerful. The BMW R75 reshaped motorcycle design. And the Rokon Trail-Breaker redefined what's possible on two wheels. Now, would you ride one of these into battle? Each was designed for the ultimate test, keeping you alive when everything else failed. Now that glowing red thing on your screen? Yeah, that's the subscribe button. Hit it if you want more rare motorcycle history. Still got some fuel in the tank? Click the next video to keep the adventure rolling.